Hi, and welcome to the Digital Diaries. Today, I'm thrilled to have Susann Burnell with me, a MIA lead solution engineer at Personetics, and has had a stellar career in IBM, Salesforce, and Zendesk beforehand. Originally from Germany, she now calls Ireland home. We're delighted to have her here. Susann, a very warm welcome to the Digital Diaries.
Thank you very much, Pete. Delighted to be here.
Right stuff. So, look, we obviously know each other a long time. We've worked together many times, but can you give our listeners a little feed as to what your career is to date and what brought you to the position you're in now?
Yeah, perfect. No, I think you kind of said it originally. I'm from Germany, so I started right after school started with IBM. They did a dual study program where I was going to university. They paid me, well, barely minimum wage, but at least I got paid to work for them and also to go to college. And that kind of gave me the chance to have a computer science and also business degree combined together. So the typical, yeah, business and IT and a little bit of intercultural communications in it. So I did that with IBM, 3 years, kind of got to look into all different departments. And eventually, then I moved to IBM Ireland, and there kind of really found my niche in what IBM called tech sales, but it's essentially pre-sales.
Yeah.
So it's really that technical cycle, part of the sales cycle where you get to talk to the customer, really figuring out what's their problem, what do they need, how can we solve it? And then I kind of just really found that, yeah, that is what I love doing. And
hmm
from there, just continued to deep dive into pre-sales further after I left IBM, went into Salesforce and kind of went through the ranks of a solution engineer there. Then took some time to go over to Zendesk, kind of worked really deep dive with enterprise customers. And now I ended in a small, not ended, but I'm currently in a smaller fintech that which is kind of really the niche that I enjoy working. So a lot of works with different banks
hmm
and really again getting down into what's the value that we with a product can provide, showing it to
hmm
them, a lot of proof of concepts, that sort of stuff. And yeah, the exciting part of the sales cycle, as I like to describe it, that's kind of my niche.
Yeah, I certainly would agree. And I remember one deal we worked together. There were four people on the call, me, you, and two people from the customer side. And you and one of the clients just went off on one at the end. You summarized and anything else I can give you. And I said, all right, price. And you're like, no, that's Pete's problem. Yeah, I'm not interested in that. But the customer loved it. And it was really a case of, look, let's talk about what problems we can solve. And it was truly, inspiring to see. Obviously now, when we were in Salesforce and it would have been similar in Zendesk, you'd have had a bit more of a team around you. How are you finding kind of leading solution engineering in a smaller company now?
As you're saying, I still have a team around me. It's now just a different team
Mm-hmm.
where there's a lot less peers in pre-sales, and I'm working a lot closer with the product team, with the sales leaders directly, and also by default, just a lot closer with the customers because
Yeah.
a lot of times, like I'm just their main focal point with those sort of things. And in parts, there's things that I miss about having, that colleague that you can just pop up and saying, oh, you were talking about working with that customer. How did you solve that issue? Whereas if that's my issue, that is now my issue. And I'm going to try to find help outside of the pre-sales org to kind of solve that, which just comes with a different set of insights and also a different way to be looking at problems
Yeah.
because the sales team is going to give you one recommendation. The
hmm
product team is going to give you a recommendation, and they're both going to be at the complete opposite spectrum because they approach it differently. Whereas then I have to find out, but how do I now bring it together in pre-sales? Whereas before in Zendesk, if I had a pre-sales problem, I go to a pre-sales colleague.
hmm
I get a pre-sales answer.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I love that the pre-sales answer, and it kind of segues really nicely into where I wanted to talk about with collaboration. It always stood out with me when I first became an E. You were my solution engineer, and you really sat me down and said, "Look, Pete, here's how it's going to work. I need to know this, this, and this, and then I'm all in on the deal." What I think all salespeople, AEs and AE leaders, really need to be mindful of is what the SE said, because I'd love to get your insight on this experience working with another SC, whereby we had this account that it definitely needed a bit of work. They were an existing customer, but they were also a SaaS company themselves, and they had a different solution. And when the big red flag was, we want to use our own solution for renewals. And I missed that as the AE. I don't mind admitting that. But my solution engineer was like, Pete, this is massive. If they're moving renewals out of here, this is a thing, and sales leadership ran with it, and we did. And ultimately, they reduced their spend and are probably going to churn longer term. I'm no longer with that company now. How would you voice that now, being a bit more experienced than the SE that I'm talking about? How would you handle that to really push that point so as resources aren't wasted?
I mean, it's always this thing of you work with different salespeople, and salespeople always look at pre-sales as either, oh, they're the difficult ones that don't want to do the job because they always just keep saying no to me and they just don't want to do it, or they're overworked, they don't have the time, so they say no. Or you have the other type of salespeople who kind of look at it and says, I don't know the answer. I think this is a deal, but let's talk about it and understand what it is and actually look at it as a partner type of thing.
Hmm.
The answer is always, if the deal is the deal, the answer that I give to the salesperson is going to be the different one, is going to be the same one.
Hmm.
But where we go from there is where the paths then diverge. Because it's always like, if a deal is a no, it's a no. But
Yeah.
I'm always a big fan of the no, but. No, this is not going to be
Hmm.
what you want it to be. No, we're not going to increase our spend with this customer because this is what they have said to us and we cannot change that. But what else can we do? And if somebody just, if I say no, but, and the AE now thinks, oh, you're the bad, you don't want to work with it, let me escalate it up the line. That now puts something in place that makes it a little bit harder for us to continue from here. Whereas if I have somebody that says, hey, here's the situation, what can we do or where
Hmm.
do we go from here? We can now work on it at a team. And is the spend going to be reduced still? Yes. But if we now work with a customer and saying, hey, we understand this is going to shrink in this area because that's going to be the best things, as you're saying, the renewals are going over here.
Hmm.
That's great. Let's work with you, customer, and make that the best possible experience so that we leave that relationship where it is.
Hmm.
But then we can then talk about the other things, like, okay, that's sorted. What else is going on?
Yeah.
You see, we're pleasant to work with. We want to do this. We help you no matter what. Because when I come in from pre-sales, it's very easy for me to say, it's not about the deal, the money, the contract for me. And I always position myself as that.
Hmm.
As I say, that's Pete. He does the money. He gets the commission. I don't. That's not what I care about, customer prospect. What I care about is where are you and where are you looking to go? And that then means if they had a good experience, even reducing their spend, next time around they're going to come back for something else, or they're going to talk to a different department and saying, hey, these guys are really good to work with and they helped me, even though it was more like attrition in their book, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is a delicate one, and I think when you're dealing with that, it's so important to understand the buyer's mindset. And certainly what I'm seeing more and more of is what I will call land and expand with a mindset of risk mitigation. And that's really where it is. It's like, let's prove the concept. Do you work in this one area really, really well? And if I look at kind of the accounts I've landed the biggest, very often a big deal might have been 50 to 100K, but there was a 300K potential, but you very rarely got that firsthand. And that would be my advice to, sales strategy as a whole. When you're coming up with figures, understand that your net new logos need to see a proof of concept. And when I say proof of concept, I really mean experience and
A
validation in
pilot,
their
yeah.
business. Yeah, of piloting. It's true. I suppose then that kind of brings quite nicely into collaboration and how we work. AI is affecting all of us right now, and it's a buzzword. And obviously, we're nerds ourselves, Suzanne. We go back. We know AI is not something that existed until 2 years ago, or didn't exist until 2 years ago. But from a generative perspective, how is that affecting your role as a solution engineer now, and what do you think it's going to shape your role over the next kind of 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think it's a nuanced answer because pre-sales as a role in general
Hmm.
is so different depending on the product that you sell, depending on the customers that you work with.
Yeah.
I think, for example, solution engineers that work in the SMB space, where it's more of a volume business, I
Hmm.
think there's a good chance that they're going to say, well, there could potentially be whole parts of their job that could be done in a smarter way, in a let's have an AI automatically generate a demo
Hmm.
environment, customize it, and kind of have it run through that. Because honestly, for that smaller scale, that might be the right thing. For
Hmm.
me now, where I work in large enterprise deals, I don't think there's any place that's going to be replaced necessarily with
Hmm.
it, but I see it as tools that I now have at my hand to make previously tedious tasks a
Hmm.
lot easier. So what I work with at the moment is a lot of transactional data in terms of banking transactional data. And obviously, you're not going to go to a demo for a bank and ask like, hey, will you just get me some of your very sensitive transactional data out of your region? I'll use it for my demo. It's not realistic and it's not
No.
going to happen. But for me to tell the stories, because what we're doing is hyper personalization within banking,
Hmm.
so the underlying data matters. So historically, I would create the data to be able to tell the story for what I needed to tell with the localization included. So, for example, if I'm working with a Swiss client with an Italian client,
Hmm.
they're going to want to see different underlying transactional data.
Yeah.
Historically, that would have been me on Google and figuring what's the largest supermarket chain in Italy? What are their cafes? So that when these customers look at it, they go, oh, yeah, this is down the road from me. Whereas now I have tools that are generative about it where I can just say, listen, I need a set of transactions in around these volumes with the most popular merchants in the following categories. I will then at least have a foundation. I'll still need to massage the data and I still need to make it tell the exact story I want it to tell so that when our tools on top of it look at it, but at least I don't have to have the whole mammoth there in
Yeah.
front of me to do it. So when we talk about sample data, about data that we don't use for production, but just to kind of demonstrate a point or even to
Hmm.
test out things to prove concepts from it, because a lot of times customers will also say, we want to do a proof of concept. I'm like, great, give us your data. No. Well, then how will I do a proof of concept? And now being able to say, well, how about we just generate some data for you from that, so knowing that it's purely fictional, you can massage it a little bit from there, so at least your data team doesn't have that much work.
Hmm.
And then we just say, and this is where we kind of start from it. Is it ideal? No. But it's that sort of situation, as you were saying. Sometimes we're in a no but type of conversation. And then we just have to do what we can. And I think the generative AI can really help in those spaces.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've seen people say, from the sales side, and I was curious about SEs that AI will wipe out the role and stuff like that. And the truth is, I think historically, we know technology doesn't actually do that. If anything, it creates roles. But what I will see is that, say, in many of the companies I've worked with, the sales cycle has been 8 steps. What I do think it'll mean is that steps one, two, and maybe three will be taken by AI or is heavily assisted. But then when people come into it, it really needs to be personalized. And kind of to your point on how you were saying about data, it's not good enough to have a sort of imagine this is yours. It has to be this is what it would look like for you. And I think that level of granularity and really personalizing it needs to make it easy. And I see it in my own outreach prospecting all the time. So I very much view this as it's a change and a pivot rather than a replacement. And I think skills are going to need to change and go with that over time. That's a really, really interesting one. I suppose, look, before we get on to a little bit of personal stuff, one last kind of more businessy question or career-based question. You're spanning over a decade. What are the key lessons that you have that you would recommend to anyone at any level that you go, one from business and two for specifically for the solution engineering world? Here's what it takes to be a good SE and move up in the ranks.
I think the most important one is always that idea, and I think it's probably on my top of my mind because I literally just had it in those last 2 weeks. It's
Hmm.
that idea of you just don't ever want to burn a single bridge that is with your colleagues, that is with your prospects, with your customers, wherever else it is. And it's not even just the thing as you will always meet each other twice. In certain region like where we work, chances are you'll see somebody a whole lot more than twice. They will
Hmm.
come and cross your paths over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably one of those lessons that I had to learn the harder way because I, in my personality, I can be a little bit more harsh and just black and white in certain aspects. That doesn't necessarily vibe with everybody,
Yeah.
and that's completely fine. But over time, it's like, listen, this is like, we don't need to like each other. That's completely optional. But we need to be working together and put that groundwork down. That's why, as you're saying, whenever I work with somebody saying, listen, here's how I want to work, you tell me how you want to work.
Hmm.
It's not going to be 100% your way and 100% my, that's not going to be, but we're going to find our way there. Let's define it very strict at the beginning and let's check in so that we make sure that that bridge doesn't get burned. If it
Hmm.
gets wobbly, let's talk about it and figure it
Yeah.
out because chances are I'll see you again at some stage or another. And that might just be as I literally I ran into an old colleague there yesterday evening in Heathrow. The week before I was in a plane flying back from Milan to Dublin. I come out of the bathroom on the plane and there is an old second liner of mine and we're just chatting there because these people are just around and you will always meet them. So most likely you will see them again or it's like, well, we're all competing for the same tender and I know you're over on the other side. So yeah, it's that.
It, it,
Yeah,
it, it
careful of the bridges when they get rocky.
I suppose I'd say two things to that. Firstly, in terms of the smallness of our community, late last year I was over visiting a friend in Manchester and I was like 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, just walking from one pub to another, and I run into the guy who was my AE when I was a BDR because he lives in Manchester. So he joined us on our night out and it was great fun. Though I do share your experiences of I did burn a bridge or two and I'm not proud of it, but trying to repair that midway through one's career is a much bigger deal. And it's certainly something that I would come from. And, there's a lot of challenges where I am right now. And I always say, we're all on Team Revolut. And we are, ultimately, we all want to grow the brand. We all want to get more customers on. So let's not fight amongst each other. Let's work together and respect each other's experiences because, there's often a very good reason why someone puts forward an idea or has a point of view on something that you and I wouldn't know. Like you grew up in Germany, I grew up in Dublin. We have there's 10 years between us, give or take. We have different world experiences, so we're going to view things differently. And that's why I would always say, yeah, 100% lead with respect. We don't have to be besties, but we do have to get on, and we do have to put our best foot forward together. Just, I suppose, on a personal note, is there anything you'd say that you have in your personal life that comes into work, or your work life that comes into your personal life, that you'd share someone to kind of get that work life harmony right?
I'm probably one of the people where I have to very honestly say I don't have it figured out. Like work-life balance, I'm not a poster child for it. I struggle with it a lot, which for me often comes from I love my work.
Hmm.
I love working in pre-sales. I absolutely love it. And delivering something that's less than 110% doesn't make me feel good
Yeah.
because I kind of hold myself to a certain standard. Now, that comes with the thing of, yeah, there's going to be certain weekends that I just work. There's going to be crazy hours that I work because that's the standard that I hold myself to. While I'm lucky that I work remotely and I'm out here in a nice garden room and I can literally see the kitchen from here, I can look over. And there's some evenings where I just look and I see the family have dinner and I was just like, I wish I was the type of person who could just kind of close it and go over and saying, hey, I can come back to it. Most of the time, I'm not.
Hmm.
But part of it is also that's the expectation that I hold myself to, and then I can also then afterwards look and saying, well, I really know that presentation that we delivered, the proof of concept, or that deal closed because I did spend those extra 5 hours on it,
Hmm.
and I know that it did, and I know that if for some reason we would lose that deal, I would always think back and go like, well, was that one dinner really worth it? And the answer is different for everybody. Some people are going to say yes, and that's my precious time, and I don't want to do it. And I'm actively working. I was like, have my calendar blocks in there. And because working in a large multinational, there's colleagues that wake up when I start working, all that sort of stuff. So working times are more of a suggestion than
Yeah.
anything else because
Yeah, yeah, totally.
time zones are a thing. But I'm trying to be better and just saying, listen, I'm going to put the kids to bed. That's
Hmm.
that the hour and a half in the evening. I can always come back later then, or I can get up a little bit earlier in the morning. Or in the same way, then I'll have very busy periods, and then there's periods afterwards where I have a little bit of the chance to then maybe take some time back. And that's probably my approach to it. Whereas I know some other people work really well with like, I have my working hours, anything beside that is gone. Whereas
Hmm.
like if I wake up in the middle of the night, it's 3 o'clock, I'm gonna check my phone. If there's some emails there, that need me. I'll do that. Like there's times when I literally walked out at 4 in the morning just to finish something up because a colleague was there, and then I go back in. Is
It,
it so?
go ahead.
It's just how I work. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't know if it's healthy, but at some stage I say it kind of works for me right now, and there's probably going to be seasons of my life where it doesn't work, and then I'm just going to have to take that step back and saying this always going to be another
It,
way to approach
it's an
it. Yeah.
interesting point, and thank you for kind of sharing it. And I agree with you. There is no right answer. If you notice, I asked the question work-life harmony as opposed to balance because it's not a 50-50 split. And, at this moment in time, we're both still parents and spouses, but we're in the professional zone right now, and you don't stop being one or the other. And I think that's a really important thing with it. I certainly found that, kind of to the point of burning bridges and tying the work-life balance together, maybe where I didn't represent myself best was when my kids were really, really young. And one personal piece for me is I can't function without sleep. I just, I'm not one of those people who can do a short night's sleep. It doesn't work for me at all. And my kids didn't sleep properly until they were 3. So I had a 5-year period in my life where I wasn't getting proper sleep. That affected everything. I've no doubt it did. And sometimes when I see people, I make such an effort to be nice to them. I love when I run into them because they're like, you're much happier, you're more attentive. And it's like, yeah, because I'm rested and I'm recharged. Unfortunately, you didn't get the best of me. So it is one of those things that I'm very cognizant of now, managing it. And then at the other side of it is I can give a little bit more to my time. And I do think, when you're working in tech and, you only have one shot as well. I think that's a very, very important thing to understand because if you burn a bridge with a customer, as you say, from a prospecting point, or you don't show up well on a pitch, as you say, if you lose the deal, that's okay, but you want to lose it with the point that you can go back to them. And if it's done wrong, you're not there. Look, Susann, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, as it always is. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Before I summarize, is that if someone wants to get in touch with you or you want to tell them a little bit about personalities, can you share that now? What's the best way?
Best way would be just to find me up on LinkedIn. My name is easy enough to spell.
It
Probably
will be in the
copy
show
paste job
notes as
though.
well.
But yeah, exactly.
So people can connect with you on LinkedIn if they want to get in touch. That's cool. And Susann, thank you so much for your insights. It's great to hear your journey coming from Germany to Ireland. Really like to hear your story and get to know it in a bit more detail. I think there's a lot of takeaways, and I definitely think kind of relationship building and good boundaries are a great lesson for anyone and any role to take with them. So thank you very, very much. Hopefully you'll be on the Digital Diaries at some point in the future as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate it.
Bye bye.
So one of the mantras we have is focus what's in your control,
Yeah.
right? So you can focus on your output, you can focus on improving your conversions, you can focus on your cold call skills. Those things remain. And those other things, if a customer has a bad day, those you can't control, but you can still control who am I reaching out to, when am I reaching out to them, how am I reaching out to them. And those things continue to be the main success drivers from what I see with my team.